Good evening and welcome to part 2 of chapter 11 of Esperanza Rising, Avocados. If you're watching this right after part 1, you'll recognize that we ended at this line at the end of page 188. Just to give us some context, I'm going to back up to the paragraph before that. Okay, remember, Miguel and Esperanza at this point in the book are on their way to Mr. Yakota's market. Miguel pulled the truck into the parking lot at the market. I'll meet you. I'm going to talk about railroad jobs with those men gathered on the corner. Esperanza went inside. Mr. Yakota was from Tokyo, and the store had all sorts of Japanese cooking ingredients like seaweed and ginger, and a fresh fish counter with fish that still had their heads. But there were Mexican products too, like masa de harina for tamales, chiles for salsa, and big bags of dried beans for frijoles. There was even cow's intestine in the meat case for menudo. And other specialties like chorizo and pig's feet. Esperanza's favorite part of the store was the ceiling that was crowded with a peculiar combination of Japanese paper lanterns and piñatas shaped like stars and donkeys. There was a small tissue donkey that Esperanza had not noticed before. It was like the one Mama had bought her a few years ago. Esperanza had thought it so cute that she had refused to break it, even though it had been filled with sweets. Instead, she had hung it in her room above her bed. A clerk walked by and impulsively she pointed to the miniature piñata. Por favor, she said, please. She bought the other things she needed, including another money order. That was one more benefit of Mr. Yakota's market. She could buy money orders there. She was waiting in the truck when Miguel came back. Another money order? What do you do with them all? Asked Miguel. I saved them in my valise. They are for such small amounts, but together they'll be enough to someday bring Abuelita here. And the piñata? It's not anyone's birthday. I bought it for Mama. I'm going to ask the nurses to put it near her bed so she'll know that I'm thinking of her. We can stop by the hospital on the way back. Will you cut a hole in the top for me so I can put the caramels inside? The nurses can eat them. He took out his pocket knife and made an opening in the piñata. While Miguel drove, Esperanza began feeding in the caramels. Not far down the main road, they approached an almond grove, the trees flush with gray-green leaves and white blossoms. Esperanza noticed a girl and a woman walking hand in hand, each with a grocery bag in her other arm. She couldn't help but think what a nice scene it made, with the two women framed against so many spring blossoms. Esperanza recognized one of them. I think that is Marta. Miguel stopped the truck, then slowly backed up. We should give her a ride. Esperanza reluctantly nodded, remembering the last time they'd given her a lift, but she opened the door. Esperanza and Miguel, que buena suerte. What good luck, said Marta. This is my mother, Ada. Thanks for the ride. Marta's mother had the same short, curly black hair, but hers was sprinkled with gray. Miguel got out and put all the groceries in the truck bed so they could sit in the front. Ada said, I heard about your mother, and I've been praying for her. Esperanza was surprised and touched. Thank you, I'm grateful. Are you coming to our camp? Asked Miguel. No, said Marta. As you probably know, I'm not welcome there. We're going a mile or so up the road to the strikers' farm. We were tossed out of the migrant workers' camp and were told either to go back to work or leave. So we left. We aren't going to work under those disgusting conditions and for those pitiful wages. Ada was quiet and nodded when Marta talked about the strike. Esperanza felt a twinge of envy when she noticed that Marta never let go of her mother's hand. There are hundreds of us together at this farm, but thousands around the country and more people join our cause each day. You are new here, but in time, you'll understand what we are trying to change. Turn left, she said, pointing to a dirt road rutted with tire marks. Miguel turned down the path bordered in cotton fields. Finally, they reached several acres of land surrounded by chain-link fencing and barbed wire, its single opening guarded by several men wearing armbands. "Aquí, right here," said Ada. "What are the guards for?" asked Esperanza. "They're for protection," said Marta. "The farmer who owns the land is sympathetic to us, but a lot of people don't like the strikers causing trouble. We've had threats. The men take turns at the entrance." Miguel pulled the truck to the side of the road and stopped. There were only 10 toilet stalls for hundreds of people, and Esperanza could smell the effects from the truck. Some people lived in tents, but others had only burlap bags stretched between poles. Some were living in their cars or old trucks. Mattresses were on the ground where people and dogs rested. A goat was tied to a tree. There was a long pipe that lay on top of the ground and a line of water spigots sticking up from it. Near each spigot were pots and pans and campfire rings, the makings of outdoor kitchens. In an irrigation ditch, women were washing clothes and children were bathing at the same time. Clotheslines ran everywhere. It was a great jumble of humanity and confusion. Esperanza could not stop looking. She felt hypnotized by the squalor, but Marta and her mother didn't seem the least bit embarrassed. "Home sweet home," said Marta. They all climbed out of the truck, but before Marta and Ada could retrieve their groceries, a Campesino family coming from the opposite direction approached them. The children were dirty and skinny, and the mother held an infant who was crying. "Do you have food so that I can feed my family?" said the father. "We were thrown out of our camp because I was striking. My family has not eaten in 2 days. There are too many people coming into the valley each day who will work for pennies. Yesterday I worked all day and made less than 50 cents, and I cannot buy food for 1 day with that. I was hoping that here, with others who have been through the same—" "You are welcome here," said Ada. Esperanza reached into the truck bed and opened the large bag of beans. "Hand me your hat, senor." The man handed over his large sun hat, and she filled it with the dried beans, then gave it back to him. "Gracias, gracias," he said. Esperanza looked at the 2 older children, their eyes watery and vacant. She lifted the piñata and held it out to them. They said nothing, but hurried toward her, took it, and ran back to their family. Marta looked at her. "Are you sure you aren't already on our side?" Esperanza shook her head. "They were hungry, that's all. Even if I believed in what you are doing, I must take care of my mother." Ada put her hand on Esperanza's arm and smiled. "We all do what we have to do. Your mother would be proud of you." Miguel handed them their bags, and they walked toward the farmer's field. Before they reached the gate, Marta suddenly turned and said, "I shouldn't be telling you this, but the strikers are more organized than they appear. In a few weeks, during asparagus, things are going to happen all over the county. We're going to shut down everything, the fields, the sheds, the railroad. If you have not joined us by then, be very careful." Then she hurried to catch up with her mother. As Miguel and Esperanza rode back to Arvin, neither of them said a word for many miles. Marta's threat and the guilt of having a job weighed heavily on Esperanza's mind. "Do you think they are right?" she asked. "I don't know," said Miguel. "What the man said is true. I have heard that there will be 10 times the people here looking for jobs in the next few months from Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, and other places too, and that they are poor people like us who need to feed their families too. If so many come and are willing to work for pennies, what will happen to us? But until then, with so many joining the strikes, I might be able to get a job at the railroad." Esperanza's mind wrestled with Miguel's words. For him, the strike was an opportunity to work at the job he loved and to make it in this country. But for her, it was a threat to her finances, Abuelita's arrival, and Mama's recuperation. Then there was the matter of her own safety. She thought of Mama and Abuelita, and she knew there was only one thing for her to do. Esperanza studied her hands a few nights later as she walked toward the cabin and hoped Hortensia had a few more avocados. It was later than usual. She had been weeding asparagus in a far field, so she had been on the last truck. When she arrived at the cabin, Everyone was crowded around the small table. There were fresh tortillas on a plate, and Hortensio was stirring a pan of machacha, scrambled eggs with shredded meat, onions, and peppers. It was Miguel's favorite, but they usually ate it for breakfast. "What is the occasion?" asked Esperanza. "I got a job in the machine shop at the railroad." "Oh, Miguel, that's good news." "So many railroad workers have joined the strikers. I know it might be temporary, but if I do a good job, maybe they will keep me." "That is right," said Alfonso. "You do good work. They will see it. They will keep you." Esperanza sat down and listened to Miguel and the others about the job, but she wasn't hearing his words. She was seeing his eyes, dancing like Papa's when he used to talk about the land. She watched Miguel's animated face, thinking that, at last, his dream was coming true. And that is the end of Chapter 11, Avocados, Boys and Girls. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time when we will do the entrance ticket on this chapter. All right, bye-bye.